Shana, you can start. Go ahead, Shana.
Okay. So, Rockabee, everyone. My name is Shayna, and today we're going to be talking about men's mental health. So, we titled this workshop, Let's Talk About Mentality. Let's talk about the mental health, a panel highlighting the importance of men talking openly and prioritizing mental health in our community. And we're going to talk about calling out misogyny and all sorts of things during this panel. So, please join us. If you're on Facebook Live, if you're on Zoom, we're very excited to bring awareness to this topic. So, I'm going to have Arti go ahead and share some facts and statistics with us.
Yeah, Ramkavir. So we wanted to start off talking about why it's important to specifically spotlight men's mental health, considering that there are important issues tied to mental health that uniquely impact men. So, for example, more than 4 times as many men as women die from suicide in the US. In 2010, a total of 38,364 Americans died by suicide, and 79% of those suicides were men. Nearly 1 in 10 experienced depression and anxiety, and about 1 in 5 develop alcohol dependence during their lives. And yet, we're still seeing that Asian Americans are 3 times less likely to seek help with South Asians, and especially South Asian men in particular being one of the least likely groups to seek help. So why is that? Why are there high rates of mental illness and suicide, yet such low rates of help seeking? Well, there's a lot of different risk factors involved. For example, for first generation South Asians in America, there's a stress from immigration, from leaving family, from being immersed in Western culture while still trying to preserve Indian culture. And there's also conflict between generations, between grandparents and parents, parents and children, and that can also be related to cultural differences. And then among older men, specifically, social isolation can be really straining on mental health, especially in the past year with the pandemic, not being able to see friends and family. Another reason for low help seeking is just the ways the symptoms present themselves. So psychological distress among Asian American men tends to be more physical symptoms, so sickness, fatigue, sleep difficulties, and disruption to daily life, like decreased performance at work or loss of interest in hobbies rather than emotional symptoms like feelings of sadness and worthlessness. So they may not even realize they are struggling with mental health, so they might go seek help from a doctor or a physician rather than, say, a psychologist. And finally, there's also harmful understandings of masculinity, ideas that men should be strong and tough, they shouldn't show emotions or sadness, shouldn't cry because it's a weakness. And these ideas can lead to men downplaying their symptoms or avoiding talking about their emotions or talking to friends and family if they're struggling, let alone seeking professional help if they need it. Instead, they may bottle that stress and negativity up and turn to alcohol or drug use, or even aggression and violence against family to cope. So all of these risk factors, as well as other factors like work and academic stress, can lead to high mental illness and low help-seeking behaviors among Indian men. But there's also a lot of protective factors out there that can help to reduce those mental health disparities. For example, social and family support, inclusion of family and mental health treatment, culturally competent mental health professionals, positive engagement with cultural activities, and then finally, actively challenging those toxic perceptions of masculinity that say men have to be strong and are not allowed to cry or be sad or talk about their mental health or feelings. And so these protective factors are really what we're hoping to foster within our community, starting with today's event, where our panelists have kindly volunteered to open up a conversation about men's mental health in our Samaj. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shayna to introduce our panelists.
So I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists, and when I say your name, you could just say a little something. So first, we'll start with Raju Kaka.
Ram Kabir, my name is Rajendra Bhakta. I live in Chino Hills, California for 39 years. And my formal education is basically engineering and management. I have a master's degree in that. And more important is I'm very passionate about human mind and understanding and managing the human mind. And also, as a human being, what's the meaning and purpose of on planet Earth? Also, I took a professional coach training, life coach training, to understand, to bring the best out of myself, and also help others bring the best out of themselves, and mainly understanding human mind and managing it, so that way the journey on planet Earth is more joyful and contributive. Thank you.
Thank you, Raju Kaka. And now we're going to go to Shailesh Kaka.
Ram Kabir, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Shailesh Govind Bhai Bhakta. I live in Buena Park, California. India, my village name is Sarai. And a little bit about myself. I was born in India and I moved to America at a very young age. So I've had the golden opportunity to live both cultures, being Indian culture and American culture. So I'm very fortunate to have experienced both cultures in my life and learning about both. So definitely it's been a huge advantage for our generation, looking at it in a positive way. And I have been working in corporate America for about 25 years as an engineer and as a manager. So very fortunate for that. And I do relate to a lot of these topics that, the committee is bringing on. And I think it's fantastic that the committee is making these awareness, public and giving people opportunities. So hopefully I can learn from a lot of the panelists today and also from all of you. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to Rajan.
Ram Kabir, everyone. I went to Cal Poly Pomona and I studied biology. A lot of you probably know my parents. My mom is Mamta Bhakta, my dad's Javadan Bhakta. Currently, I'm working at Beckman Coulter as a senior systems engineer. A lot of my passions include like hiking, rock climbing, and kayaking.
All right, thank you, Rajan. Now we're going to go lastly to our last panelist, Anand Bhai.
Hi, thank you, Ram Kabir, to everyone. My name's Anand Rajendra Bhakta. Like Raju Kaka is kind of like my dad, but my dad's also in India and his name is Rajendra too. I grew up in Bombay. I was born and raised there. I was there until I was 17. I moved to the US at that time. So like Shailesh Kaka, I've actually had an opportunity to experience really both cultures and be in both places. So I definitely do relate a lot with some of the mental health issues. I think that's actually a very interesting area for me to look at as well. I currently work in corporate America as well as a systems auditor as well as a program manager. So yeah, super excited to be here.
Thank you, Anand Bhai. So how this panel is going to work is we're going to ask some questions. Not everybody's going to answer the questions because of time. I would love to hear from everyone, but we are on a time constraint. So I'm going to go around and ask a few questions to everyone and just start an open conversation to really dive deep into this subject. So I'm going to start off. This is the only question that I'm going to ask every panelist. So we can start with Raju Kaka. So the question is, what difficulties do you face prioritizing and talking about your mental health as a South Asian man, and how do you overcome them?
Okay, thank you, Shaina. Very important thing. When we were brought up in India, it was more like different roles, like man has certain roles and a woman has certain roles. And a man should not be doing this, man should not be, we were programmed, to not to cry. Let's say if you're crying, then say, what kind of person you are, what kind of man you are. Also, there are certain things which only man does, and then you're not supposed to do those things, other things. So the biggest challenge when as a man you navigate the life on planet Earth, definitely you face these issues of like mental health. First of all, after coming to USA, only I found out that there is such thing as a mental health. And biggest challenge was not finding people who will understand whenever we have an issue, that people will not understand, and also they're not qualified. And then what they do is, because we live in a closed community, they start spreading whatever they understood to among other community members. And that was the biggest fear of not talking about, hey, that I do, have a challenge of mental health, or if I have a certain thing. Let's say, I'll tell you, my dad in India, when I was living, he was going through a depression, but I had no idea what depression is and why he was behaving and whatnot. But when I came to USA, then I said, what is this depression and things like that? So when that mental health issues came in, everyone's life, even my life, at certain degree came in, the problem was, biggest challenge is not finding trusted people who will keep confidentiality, and also will understand, because most of the people, they don't keep their continuous education with this kind of thing. So how I resolve it is, like, I found a couple of trusted friends, and we kind of made an arrangement that, okay, hey, I'll talk to you about my problems, you talk to me about problems, but you become a soundboard too. And then other thing, what I did is I took retreats of men's retreats, only men. And over there, they were American organized. That's really helped me understanding this thing, because it's a neutral environment where nobody knows no one. And then you just go and explore the whole thing. Another thing, how I understood is, I brought Eastern spirituality. Eastern spirituality from India has tremendous tools to manage your mind, understand and manage your mind. So that really helped me. And I wish more of us recognize, understand, and take the help of the tools which are given from the Eastern spirituality from India. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaka. And I completely agree. I think that's why I thank you and all the panelists for coming today, because I think still there's a lot of men in our community who are having trouble starting these open conversations. You don't need to talk to everyone, but like you said, finding 2 or 3 friends where you can have open conversation, no judgment. I think that's very important. And I think that's why, because you guys have been so transparent and able to talk to us today, that people are willing to see that, oh, maybe I can talk to someone. Maybe there won't be misinformation spread, or there won't be someone talking about me if I say what my problems are. So thank you, Kaka. So same question applies to Rajan. Do you want me to ask it again, or are you good?
Sure. Yeah, feel free to ask it again.
So it's, what difficulties do you face prioritizing and talking about your mental health as a South Asian man, and how do you overcome them?
I feel like I definitely had an interesting experience, compared to the rest of the panelists. Being born here and going through like the entire American education system it's interesting. Going through having like a hybrid identity of like being Indian as well as, somewhat American, it kind of like was hat switching. With my friends, I could be very open about certain topics, and then talking about other things in the community were very hush hush. Raju Kaka brought up a really good point about, expressing emotions and, crying in a healthy space. And I feel like a lot of people, don't have the luxury to do that, unfortunately. Like the family environment that they're in is very toxic, and they can't clearly express their emotions, and how they feel in that moment without some type of backlash. Luckily I grew up in a family where we communicate, and then communication can always be better. I think a lot of the things that men are sort of forced into is like that stoic model of being like quiet and strong and just like a pillar, and I don't think that's healthy. I think learning how to communicate effectively and not kind of shutting yourself off, because I feel like that's very common with, you know, the way that men are raised in society, is that you are supposed to be like, you know, this quiet, stoic, you know, sort of figure that is a provider and, you know, works for the family, and you're not allowed to have fun, if that makes sense. But that's my take on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think especially in our community, showing emotions and talking openly isn't normal per se. Like we're starting to transition into it, but it's these conversations that push people to be like, it's okay to cry when you're talking to someone about something. It's okay to confide in someone about something. I don't always have to be strong. I don't always have to be the provider. And I think that's a big thing that we need to tap into in our community. So thank you. So now we're going to go to Shailesh Kaka. Did you want me to repeat the question or do you have it down?
No, I have it down. So, you know, in terms of prioritizing mental health, I think, and as Rajibai and Rajan had mentioned, they have good points. Culture, I think, plays a very, very critical role in mental health and how an individual prioritizes it. So, you know, as Southeastern men, I think the general trend is for us to not so much think about mental health. We go about our daily activities, and we'll talk about some of the masculine traits here in a while. But South Asian men don't typically think about mental health as much as, let's say, Western men do, Americans, for example. So prioritizing it is not as high. But you know, growing up in America, I think it opens up everyone's eyes as well, and not just America, but everywhere nowadays, because of social media awareness that's created. I think it's a good thing. But you know, in terms of prioritizing mental health, I can say early on in my life we didn't think about it too much. But you know, as we get older, we see opportunities. We are made aware of you know, challenges that we have both mentally, spiritually, as well as Rajibai mentioned. So that awareness is created, and we have to prioritize it ourselves, right? At some point, it's up to the individual to make that priority for them. No one else is going to do it for you. So you have to prioritize it and take that step. And how do we overcome that, right? So, you know, as we talked about, a lot of these sessions that we have, a lot of these awareness meetings that we create, and unfortunately, a lot of the tragic situations that we've seen, especially over the past year and a half, you know, should make us more aware and should make us prioritize that, you know, our state of mind is very, very important, not just for ourselves, but for people around us. So, you know, that's how we should overcome it, is to educate ourselves, become aware, and hopefully we don't, you know, it doesn't take tragic situations for us to learn, but take the steps and make the choice ourselves to prioritize our well-being mentally first. And, you know, with mental comes physical, right? The more stable and positive you are mentally, physically, you're going to feel a lot better. So I think that's how we have to overcome it and prioritize it.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes we get so caught up in, oh, I have to provide for, say, my son and daughter, my wife, my mom and dad. You also have to recognize if you are not in the proper mind state, you aren't going to be able to properly provide for someone else, or your reflections might reflect differently if you are not in the right being. So I think prioritizing yourself is a very, very important topic. So thank you. So now we're going to have Anandai answer the question.
Thank you, Shayna. So I mean, I think all of the panelists kind of gave really good points, right? I do agree with Raju Kaka a lot, right? In terms of, and I don't think it's just men per se. I think all people in general don't feel very comfortable talking about our emotions, and especially, I would say, men, and just because the way that we're programmed, right? We've been programmed to kind of say, hey, it's not always good to talk about emotions. So I feel like the biggest struggle comes within yourself, because step one is always trying to convince yourself that, hey, I should talk about it. And that, I think, is the biggest struggle that, at least for me, and I know a lot of people that kind of go that. But from my standpoint, I've actually, I mean, knock on wood, maybe I've been kind of fortunate to whenever I feel like I have a need, there's always a support system that I can reach out to. And building that support system, I think, is super important, whether it's in our community, whether it's our friends group, whether it's family. But having that support system is, I think, key. And whether you need it or not, I think somebody needs it, And I think it's super important to either create your own support system or at least be part of a support system. So we as a community, we as people can kind of grow and all learn from each other too, because I feel like, emotions and mental health sometimes is not a one person's problem. I think what maybe I'm going through might be similar to what you're going through, or some other person might be going through that at the same time. So I feel like it does help to talk about it, but the biggest challenge for me is like, hey, how do I convince myself that it's okay to talk about those things?
No, yeah, definitely. I think like you said, I think that's something everyone struggles with, that should I be talking about this? Is this even a problem, or am I making it up? I think a lot of people experience that. And like you said, be it like your friends, your community, I think that's why we're starting these conversations, so that if you can't find someone, you have people like us. Or we also have resources. If you don't feel comfortable talking to someone close to you, we have them up on our pages of South Asian therapists, groups. So there's so many different avenues that you can take, and there's no shame in taking them as well. Even if you think it may not be a problem, it doesn't hurt to get help. There's no one going to look down upon you for trying to better yourself or trying to feel better. So I definitely agree. So I'm going to go on to the next question, which is for Rajan. So this question is, describe an instance in your own life where you felt unsupported by a community when it comes to your mental health. Describe an instance in your life where you felt a bit comfortable about speaking your emotions and your actions with the support of others. So it's kind of a two-end question.
Okay. Unsupported. A lot of the Indian community has like a very rigid form of masculinity, right? Like we have obviously slurs that we use in Gujarati to describe someone that is effeminate, someone that might like other passions, like I don't know, flowering, gardening, painting, artists, whatever they want to do. There tends to be like hush hush talk about everything. Someone might have a passion for makeup and they're a guy, right? Yet that's so weird. When it's just another form of self-expression. I think, a lot of the things the community tends to shy away from, and I didn't necessarily feel supported in my own decisions. Like, and this goes vice versa. If a woman were to go for a typical, masculine role, like let's say they wanted to play football or they wanted to play basketball, and that's like, no, that's a guy sport. Well, it's like, well, what does that mean? If a guy wants to go on the dance floor, like, then that's seen effeminate. Like, that's why. I think that's where I felt kind of unsupported by the community, when people don't necessarily let you live the life that you want to live. And it's seemingly normal, right? Like, these aren't crazy, outrageous things. Yet there seems to be some type of judgment when it comes to that. And it goes both ways, right? Like, a woman could want, a very high paying job in a very, technical field, and let's say not want kids or not want to get married, and somehow there's something wrong with her. I think it's just the gender roles and gender stereotypes are prevalent in the South Asian community, and they're slowly getting changed. And I definitely have hope for the future, because it's not, it's very attainable. It's an uncomfortable growing process for a lot of people. And I understand it's uncomfortable because you kind of have to unlearn a lot of things that you were socially programmed to do. And that's difficult. I mean, and you learn that, like, in your history and past, that you may have been a perpetrator or, an agent of the patriarchy in a sense. And it's an uncomfortable growing process. You learn that some of the decisions that you made in the past may have not really helped anyone or helped yourself. And it's uncomfortable to do that. And I understand why a lot of people are hesitant in the status quo, because it requires a lot of energy to do that.
No, yeah, thank you so much. I agree. I always say change happens with uncomfortable conversations. And I think that's why sometimes we're having conversations like this, because to everyone, like you pointed out, say, I love playing football and you like dancing and painting. Like for some people, and that's just what they learn, that's not normal. That's not what a man should do. That's not what a woman should do. That's not anyone's fault, because some of these generations go way back and that's just what they were taught. But I think unlearning that and then having those uncomfortable conversations and opening up to where we can be like, okay, well, this is kind of hindering my mental health because I like this, but I'm scared of what people, or I want to do this, but it's deteriorating my mental health because I feel like I'm being judged. So I think you made some very important points in the sense of we need to be also more open in our community, in the sense of not gender, like cornering certain genders to do certain things, or having people play specific roles, say like only like a man can be president of the board. Like that's not true. I feel like women are really capable, and little things like that we are starting to have conversations about that may be uncomfortable just because it's just not in the norm, but they need to have those conversations. So thank you for that one. So I'm going to move on.
Sorry, I was just going to add, because this is a very good question. And there's an instance that just came out. If people might know Naomi Osaka. She's a tennis player, right? So she was the #1 tennis player in the world, and she's maybe 19 or 20. She's been #1 for a couple of years, and recently in Time Magazine this week, she was on the front cover, and it says it's okay not to be okay. And she has withdrawn from Wimbledon, some French Open, because of mental health issues that she felt she just couldn't cope with, and she was being pressured. So over the last 2 or 3 months, she has withdrawn from these tournaments, and she's made it known publicly, even though she's very uncomfortable, that she's withdrawing because of mental health and just pressures that she doesn't know how to deal with. So I think those are the situations where, awareness is created. And, there are so many famous athletes who have retired, so to speak, before their peak. If you look at Bjorn Borg, who played tennis, even football, for people who love football, Barry Sanders, there are a lot of famous athletes who just didn't know how to deal with pressure, the mental health portion of things that come along in their lives. And, they stopped doing what they love doing. But the important thing about this is they admitted it. They publicly actually admitted it, that, hey, I have a problem. I cannot deal with this. I need help. So those are the situations also that help all of us. That, if these famous people can publicly and let the whole world know that they've got a mental challenge, why can't we, who are not as famous, ask for help as well? So, just a couple of situations recently that occurred that is actually very good to this question.
No, I completely agree. I think it takes one person to take a stand to see, oh, okay, they're speaking openly about it. I feel kind of safe to talk to them about it, for that chain reaction to start. And that's the chain reaction we're actually hoping to start through these awareness panels, through this. And actually it's perfect, because the next question was for you, Kaka. So the question is, there are high rates of addiction, alcoholism, and perpetuating domestic violence among men due to the tendency to turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms rather than seeking professional help or talking to loved ones. So as a man, how do you avoid being a bystander to domestic violence?
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand the question. And first of all, I think it's important for all of us to realize that hopefully none of us are ever put in a situation where we are a bystander or even a participant in any type of domestic violence, right? Hopefully that situation never, ever occurs for any one of us. But in terms of how do we avoid being a bystander, Shana, is that the question?
Yeah, so how do you avoid being a bystander and just standing up when you do see it?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question, and I think it really really brings out what a person is made up of, and also what do they need to do to get better. So most people, it's human nature to say, it's not my problem. If I'm a bystander, if I see domestic violence because of mental health issues or whatever the root cause is, uh, the first reaction, human nature is, it's not my problem. I don't want to get involved, right? That's not my problem. So it's human nature sometimes to take that approach. But, I think the problem there is when you take that position, you're also guilty, just as much as the person who's committing the domestic violence. Basically, you're a bystander who's doing nothing, right? So sometimes, you're guilt by association, so to speak. So, and it's the wrong thing to do, right? That's the most important thing. It's the wrong thing to do to just sit and not do anything. So it's not easy. It's not easy for most people to take action when they see something like that. It's definitely not easy. I've gone through a couple instances as well where I've seen that. And I can tell you that, in my life, if I had the chance to go back, I would do it differently. So you learn from it, but definitely, it challenges you as well at that moment in time to do the right thing, right? And it takes a lot of courage and guts as well. So it's not easy, but, that's what we have to learn to do. And, again, how do we avoid being a bystander to this is just like this, talking about it, sharing experiences, creating awareness, giving strength, hope, some guidance, whatever people can take out of these types of seminars, lectures, things like that. That's the most important thing. But definitely, hopefully we're never part of that situation. But if we, unfortunately, if we are, then we have to, just push ourselves to do the right thing.
Thank you. I agree. I think accountability when it comes to this is huge. And be it, say, someone in your family, a family friend, or someone you don't even know, I think accountability as a man is very important in the sense of if you aren't able to follow those guidelines, how are you, you have to be able to tell someone else as well when it comes to instances like this, because it is serious, it is damaging to so many people. And I think being able to hold yourself accountable and others accountable as well is very important when it comes to this. So thank you. So our next question is for Raju Gupta. And then the question after that will be for Anand. So this question is, how has toxic masculinity disadvantaged you? And what privileges have you gained from patriarchy? And what steps do you suggest men take to acknowledge their privileges as men and change sexism? So it's a loaded question, so we can break it down into parts or however you want to go about it.
Okay, I know it's a, very deep subject. See, masculinity is basically, we, as I said, we were brought up in that environment where this is the role, typical roles of earning money, and running businesses, running family, and those are the kind of thing. But to me, when it becomes like toxic, is basically the behavior part of it. See, the human man part of a man's responsibility or man's masculinity is one thing, but when the behavior impacts and changes, and the reason is because the man cannot manage his own mind, and what happens after that, the behavior changes, and behavior with that it becomes toxic, because then they will start abusing, also because they are inability to manage themselves. They take the different path of like how to deal with it. And then let's say alcoholism or drug or any other thing, if they have an anger issue, and because they cannot manage that, they take all these other routes, and that become more toxic. So it luckily, I was a student of life, so I continuously kept on working on myself and on a continuous education. And I will include in one of the questions which you have asked is that our education should not stop after the university. Once we get the degree, it should not stop. Life itself is a continuous education, and understanding human mind and brain, both, because brain is just a mind in action, but both of them, they communicate with each other, mind and brain, and managing it, and keeping it healthy, just like the whole body is healthy, that part of our health is extremely important. If we take different routes, then it looks like, oh, I'm solving a problem, but actually you are creating a huge problem. You're adding into the problem rather than solving. So if, to me, that is a toxic masculinity. And then what privileges have you gained from patriarchy? Well, as a father figure role, which is a, once we have that role, it comes with a huge responsibility. And to me, I would say, I believe in that I should be better parent than my parent. And I want my kids to be better parent than myself. And for that, they have to educate themselves continuously on the human part of it. So what I would suggest to majority of the men is, when I took a training, before training, I really wasn't a extremely aware with conscious man. So with the training, what happens is you become responsible, still humble man. You are responsible for, you are navigating yourself, and you are navigating a family, you are navigating business and whatever it is, everyone's situation. But to me, understanding your own self and having continuous education, don't stop just because of you have degree, and then become better every day. How can I become better than myself? You're not comparing with other people, but your own behavior, your own action, your own discipline, your own, how much loving are you? So those are the things I would say. It's a journey where you become better, your own version. And I think that's what I will inform, or at least I will advise people to do that. And I think our Eastern spiritual education system is tremendous. Our culture, we are actually inheriting a lot of wonderful things. I will add that the American people are more bold. And the reason they are bold also because of their nature. Also, they don't belong to most of them, they don't belong to community. We have a close-knit community, which are a lot of advantage. One of the disadvantages, the news spread very like a wildfire. So if something happens, everyone knows about it, which are the disadvantage. There are tremendous advantage. To me, like what we are talking about and holding each other's hand, this is a great, great advantage of our community. And I think we should take this community and people like you and leaders, young leaders, should take it to the next level of our community bonding. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaka. I agree. I think a lot of the times we're scared because we call ourselves a community, but if we say something and it gets around, then we're scared of what people will think, what will happen. So I think this is what actually embodies what a community is: having open conversation, supporting one another, no judgment. So I think that's something I think especially the younger generation is really pushing for, in terms of we really want to create an actual bonding sense within the community and not have this sense of fear that if we open up about something, if we talk about something, then we're going to be judged or looked down upon. So thank you so much for that. So the next question is for Anand. So what steps do you suggest men take to acknowledge their privileges as men and change sexism? I'm kind of asking this in the dad perspective because I know you have 2 daughters. So from that sense, dad of girls, perfect. How would you answer that question?
I think I would like to kind of add on to kind of what Raju Kaka was saying too, right? Like one of the things that I believe Gandhi said, right, is like be the change you want to see. So, I would say, we just need to be the change that we want to see in this world. So if we want to be open about it, we need to talk about it. If we want to elevate our women or our kids or daughters, we need to set a good example for them. So I think that's where it starts. It starts with you individually, and then once it starts with you, I believe it does spread, because when people see it, and I would say I was actually quite fortunate to have some really good role models in my life, right? Like from a men perspective, like my dad, Bodada, everybody kind of that I was around, they all believed in empowering their significant others or their daughters, so I think that's kind of sits with me. And I feel like, hey, the more people think about it that way, and maybe it's not even empowering just them, because at times they empower you and you need to just support each other. And that's, I think, what it comes down to. So I don't think that there's like any magic bullet out there that's going to solve it overnight, but I feel like it always starts with you. So that would be my answer.
Thank you so much. I completely agree. I think when we take that step, other people see it and it's a chain reaction of, oh, okay, like I am supported here. Let me also bring that environment to my children. I know I don't have children, but when I do, I feel like that's a step that I would love to take as well. So thank you for that. And the next question is going to be for Rajan. So this question is, what are some steps men can implement in their daily life to support other men's well-being? Because I feel like often we hear about like, oh, men should be more supportive of women and women should be more supportive of men. But how would you say as like a man, how you can support another man's well-being?
This is going to be a good one. Actually, I like this question. I think educating yourself, building a network of friends that's openly and supportive. I have a group of guy friends, that I've met since high school, and they're very supportive. We talk, we vent each other about our problems. We're very communicative. If something's bothering us, we put in a group chat, just so that people know how you're feeling. And I think finding a network that supports you is really key to this. Having players on the same team with you, someone to hear you out, and advocating for someone else like that. Also, to fight this whole toxic masculinity thing, right? You have to not engage in it as well. To help other men, you have to disengage the toxic masculinity part of it. And that'll create a better idea of what being a man is. And then that means you might have to speak up in uncomfortable situations. If someone's using, a homophobic slur, you kind of have to call it out. And it's uncomfortable, if someone doesn't necessarily have the training, or, someone doesn't want to be a bystander or engage in that. I completely understand. But, sometimes you have to diffuse that situation in order for healthy masculinity to grow. You kind of have to cut the weeds so the flowers can grow. Not being an agent of the patriarchy, allowing yourself to communicate with other men and kind of talking about your daily life. I think, a lot of men kind of get tunnel vision. And, like in Arti's presentation, we have physical symptoms of, depression, anxiety. We don't really have the psychological symptoms of it. You kind of have to recognize that and feel it in yourself. Take care of your body. You can't take care of others unless you take care of yourself. Understanding your own mental hygiene, you can help others and educate yourself and educate others. And just being an ally, for other men. Sometimes you kind of have to put your friends back together, and being there from the ground up. You just have to be a pillar for someone to lean on. I don't want to use pillar for someone to lean on, because I don't want to add into that trope of like, men are, the pillars of everything. But, sometimes you just have to be supportive in their love language. If that means, you know, taking them out for ice cream or just hearing out to their problems or venting. And sometimes people just want someone to talk to. You know, they don't necessarily want someone to solve the problem. They just want someone to kind of bounce ideas off of and, you know, let them know what's going on in my life.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think you brought up a very important point in the sense of not everyone's going to want you to solve their problems or like fix it for them, but to them, maybe something is a little different. Like Arti jokes all the time with me, for instance, between us. For me, like I'll bake her like a batch of cookies and just listen to her talk. So it's very different in the sense of when people how they respond to support. Some people need support in different forms, and I think that's a very good topic that you brought up. And I think establishing those boundaries and establishing those and starting those conversations of, hey man, like I don't really want your advice, but I just want you to listen. Or I want you to just hang out with me and go to dinner so I can get out of my house so I'm not stuck in my room all day. I think those little steps are very important. I think we often, when we talk about mental health, people kind of get like blur the line of, oh, I just want them to help me fix my problem. But to people, and I know we're talking about men specifically right now, men to other men, like say, I'll use my dad for example. For him, like an escape is going to play golf. So like to him, that's just something he loves doing. That's like a good way to get out. And so to him, that's his form of self-care. And I think to different people, it looks differently. I think it's important that you brought that up because sharing conversations on mental health don't look the same for everyone. So thank you for that. So we're going to go on to our next question, which is going.
I want to just kind of, if I can, just kind of add on to this question because it's important on men challenging sexism as well. So I can tell you, and the whole everyone on the call is that I think people have made great strides in the last 15, 20 years, especially men, in acknowledging women and trying to diminish the sexism part of their thinking, especially in corporate America. I think what we've seen, I mean, great examples are, some of the best leaders of the world are women. You have so many CEOs today who are women. During the pandemic, they had a study that said that, the prime ministers in the world, the countries that had the least amount of churn and cases and et cetera, the leaders of those countries were women. So, we see a lot of men, especially nowadays, really actually depend on the inputs, ideas, and feedback and leadership from women in corporate America, especially. Some of the brightest people that at least I've worked with have been women. In my house, there are two women who inspire me every day. They're great leaders. They're great people. So they inspire my household as well every day. So I think men in general, especially over the last 10, 15, 20 years, throughout the world have realized and taken steps, I think, to understand that and acknowledge that. So, I do want to give the men some credit.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And especially because my studies is kind of in corporate America as well, and where I'm trying to get headed. And so I agree, now working in a work environment where there are a lot of women who are on boards that you probably wouldn't have seen before. And I absolutely love what you said about the women in your house inspiring you too. I think that's like what we're aiming at today in today's panel too, if it comes from your house and then it can spread everywhere else. But if it doesn't come from your house, then it's hard to spread everywhere else. And I think that's a big and very important point that you talked about, in the sense of that there's these great strides being made, and especially in the South Asian community, if they're coming from your house, then they're able to flourish in the real world, in work environments, in any environment, truly. So I think that was an amazing point that you made. Thank you. So our next question is going to go to Anandbai. So this question is going to be, what advice would you give younger generations of men in terms of breaking down the idea of what masculinity is?
I would say, like Sarashbhai said, right? Like it's something that over the last decade or so, I feel like there's been great strides made, right? And, interestingly, actually through work, I was able to join, there's a women in leadership group at our company. And we get to kind of be part of that sometimes, and they'll invite certain people to say, hey, we're going to have someone talk about this topic. And the topic was, viewing from like, what's your lens kind of a thing. So the whole idea there is men typically have a certain lens, meaning they view the world a certain way, and women view a world a certain way. And not that one is better than the other. The whole purpose of that exercise is to recognize that there's different voices, different ideas, different thoughts in the room. And I would say the most successful companies, the most successful people actually tend to listen to all of those thoughts. And, you don't know where good ideas are going to come from. You don't know where good thoughts are going to come from. So I feel like patience, being open to just listen, at least, that is a huge stride. I think that's where it starts, to be honest. It's and like you said too, Shayna, right? Like it starts within your house, within yourself. So I'm a big proponent of that. I don't believe in like, hey, everybody should do this. I'm more like, what can I do? And I think Raju Kaka even touched on it earlier, right? Is you constantly have to figure out how can you make yourself better? Because over the years, one of the things that I've learned is hey, you can't control everything. Mm-hmm. I can only control myself. So that's why you have to try to control yourself and see what you can do. And then, hopefully that gets propagated. And if 5 people, 10 people think like that, that's a huge stride in my mind. I mean, it just starts there.
I completely agree. I think if we individually can make little impacts to small groups of people, then it becomes a widespread thing. I think we don't need to be like, I want everyone to have a changed mindset, or I want everyone to be super positive all the time. I just think that's not realistic. That's just not how it works. So I agree when you say, when we make those changes within us and having patience and listening, there's always that joke that in the business world, well, you should listen to the intern because maybe they have a good idea. So I think this kind of comes in like that, in the sense of always listening, being patient, and just trying to do what you can in your vicinity, in your realm. That makes a big difference whether you see it or not in the overall environment. So I'm actually going to ask this question to everyone because it is our last question. So Raju Kaka, do you want to answer this question?
Yes, thank you. To me, the piece of awareness education I will bring is the first masculinity. Before that, you are human. So humanity. Once we recognize that I am human, then human happen to be a male. That comes second. So once you understand the human role, then the other role, which is a man you are playing, it becomes slightly easier, because once you are human, everyone is a human on earth. It's, you start then seeing them, as Anand says, with the even though the lens is different, but you respect their lens, and honor. So honor, respect, and love. So some of those things, once we start adopting and implementing in our life, and that's a show in our speech, how we speak and how we communicate, and also in action, because we have to show the evidence. Every time, what one person can talk is one thing, but do they have evidence? It's like, what in corporate world, do you walk your talk? So those are things. Once we understand the humanity, to me, hey, I'm human, happen to be a male. And as a human, the other person has the same essence. Again, I will bring a little bit of spirituality from India, because I have gained a lot. I have tremendous gain from our own, knowledge and understanding. So what happens is that once you become human and you understand that I am human, happen to be a male, then you see everyone as a human. And what is human made of? There is a higher power, something which is represent in every human being. So that's where your respect and love and honor and all those things start coming. And then your behavior will start changing and your respect and the rest of the thing. Then you just become like a person wherever you go. You just take yourself and yourself in the sense, as Anand said also, when you keep working on yourself, whole of you, if you're a peaceful, loving, kind-hearted person, human, that's what you are taking. The physical body is just a physical body. Everyone has a physical body. But what you are made of within as a human, that's what you carry. And that's what even Buddha used to say, that the human body is a vehicle through which you carry the human mind. And that's what we need to, once we purify and make our heart gentler and kinder, with full of love, that's what you're going to carry. And I think that's where the second part, I'm human, but I happen to be a man. As a man, what kind of man I am, and how can I continuously keep improving myself in my behavior and my speech and my action. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. That was honestly very inspiring. I was touched by that too. I think we often forget. I know we talk about we having a men's panel, we had a women's panel, but overall, like Raju Kaka said, we're just humans. At the end of the day, if we all treat each other equally, I think a lot comes out from that if we don't view through this narrow vision, this tunnel vision, being separating the gender roles and everything, and just treating everyone with humanity and kindness. And I think that's what I love about this panel, is that there's such a widespread of perspective and different backgrounds and history behind each of the panelists, that we were getting so many different perspectives that we wouldn't have thought about on our own, or we wouldn't have necessarily seen right away. So thank you for the answer, Raju Kaka. So we're going to go with Shailesh Kaka and then end with Raja.
Yeah, so listen, I think Raju Bhai and Anand said it really good in terms of the masculinity and breaking it down. So, when we think of masculinity, words like leadership, fearlessness, decisive, strength, those words pop up, and a lot of those characteristics and words sometimes are very easy to do, sometimes, but the most difficult things in life to do, as Raju Bhai said, is how to improve yourself. How do you obtain the characteristics of adding in compassion, fairness, love, respect, equality? Those are the characteristics in life that are much more difficult for people to learn, to instill, to practice. It's much easier to be very, dominant, authoritative. Those are a lot easier to learn and do, but the other ones are a lot more difficult. Those are the things that help define a person, make them better in life, make them better to other people. And as Raju Bhai said, at the end of the day, we're humans. We're here to not, just serve ourselves, but we're here to serve our fellow man, right? We're here to take care of our families. We're here to take care of people around us, make their lives better, not just ours. So, and that's why we're put on this earth, to see what we can do and how we can do it better, right? That's where we're going to get judged at the end of the day. So we have to always practice these things, get better at them, and be motivated to do it. So it's not easy. If it was easy, I don't think none of us would be here, right? So that's why we have to keep practicing in life, keep doing things in life. We'll always have our ups and downs, but we have a support group, we have family, we have friends, we have all of us to pick each other up, to kind of push us in the right direction when we go in the wrong direction. So utilize all that, right? We have to utilize all the resources that we can in life. It's not easy, especially in the 21st century, social media, you have this, you have that, your mind is running in 10 different directions. It's not easy to have a lot of good values nowadays, but we have to make it a point to learn them, to practice them, and to do the best job we can. So thanks again for at least having all of us and having me for this discussion.
No, of course. Thank you for being here. And I agree with the point that you said, that I think even on social media, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, he's so strong, he's providing for his family. But I think people don't realize most of the time social media is a highlight reel. People post the happy parts of their life, the good parts of their lives. And it's very easy to get caught up in, oh my God, he just bought a house, or he just got promoted on LinkedIn, or something like that. And I think it's very easy for us to get caught up in that. And I think conversations like these, direct, honest conversations and open conversations, is what really brings us back to, okay, we may have this perception that, oh, someone's life is so perfect, but it's not most of the time. If you speak to them, if you have a conversation to them, I think that's a very important topic that you brought up. And I thank you for being here today. And last, we're going to end with Rajan.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for coming, to this panel, and, everyone else on this panel. They've given great insight, and I've learned, a lesson from all of you. I guess in conclusion with all of this, we've kind of gone to the human experience at the end of this conversation. We're a creature of habits. What you spend your time and energy on is what you invest in. That becomes yourself, your identity. I feel like a lot of people make the world as small or as big as it needs to be. Sometimes people make a mountain out of a molehill when it comes to certain, caring about something in the future that may not necessarily matter, right? This anxious moment in your life, as weird as it may seem, it may not matter in 5 years, and it may seem very large. Or some people might downplay something, they might downplay their mental health. Oh, like, this is not as big as a problem that I think it is. It's very small. And in reality, that's probably something that's very alarming. At the end of the day, we're a community, and I think we're headed towards the right direction. We're taking a lot of steps. There's a lot of people in this next generation that are really taking the mantle. And it inspires me, the potential that this has, right? Just after this talk as well, like after this panel, I really hope that people start to have discussions, things a lot less stigmatized. And part of that stigma is, you're pouring energy and care into something, right? That's may not necessarily as big of a problem as you think it is, right? And that's what stigma is. And your world can get a lot larger if you let more people in it. I think, this whole concept of tunnel visioning, right? Like, there are so many things in our life that we get vain or selfish about. And when you let other people in, your lens changes. You get a little more open and perceptive to things, right? Your job is more fulfilling. Your relationships are more fulfilling. You feel better. And I really hope that, this mental health, for men's health, I hope that if someone does need any type of, professional care after this panel, that they do hope, I hope that they do seek it. I hope people care more about, what they're thinking, in terms of, what their priorities are and what their life goals are. I hope that they gain a better sense of self, and if they do have, anxious tendencies, or they do start to have these depressing thoughts, that they do seek help. In conclusion, I really want to thank everyone for hosting this.
Thank you. I completely agree. Our next slide is actually going to be about resources for everyone. And just like Rajan said, I think the main purpose of today was to have this open conversation, and to maybe, if you had earlier had thoughts of being like, oh, it's not a big deal, like it doesn't matter, not to disregard how you feel, not to push back what you're thinking, and that your problem may be minute to someone else, but to you it's a big deal. So seeking help, talking about it, be whether with us, professionally, that was the main goal of today. And it was really to just break down the stigma of, I have to be a tough man, I have to provide for my family, I can't cry. That was our main purpose of, we really want to break down those walls so we can have these open conversations. And just like Rajan said, I think I do also have a lot of hope for our future as a community, and just having these open conversations and seeing the strides men have made for women, for themselves, for their families. I think in general, I think that this panel was very inspiring and eye-opening. And I want to thank all the panelists for being here today. It takes a lot to come and speak, even if it's on a virtual setting, because there's hundreds of people watching on Zoom and Facebook Live, and to be this transparent and open. It's not easy. So I really want to thank all of you for being here today and being so open and willing to help us out and start this conversation. So we're actually going to go to the next slide, which Arti is going to talk about resources.
Yeah, so if you need any resources, they're on the left over here. Feel free to take a screenshot on your phone. So there's resources related to suicide prevention, substance use and mental health, and some South Asian therapists, as well as domestic violence resources, because that topic did come up today. And on the right, there are our socials. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you can also email us if you have any questions or comments or concerns. And yeah, finally, thank you to everyone who joined us today. And thank you to our panelists and Shayna for taking the lead in opening up this conversation about men's mental health and deconstructing and reconstructing masculinity in a more positive light. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to quickly add on to that, if you ever need any of these resources, they're linked on all of our social medias, or you can email us and we will respond with the resources. And I also want to say thank you to Arti. She does a lot of the behind the scenes of the statistics and the research. And I love talking, yes, thank you, Radhika. I love talking to her about these topics and opening up these conversations. It does take a lot of work. There's also a lot more people on our committee that help with the social media, the graphics, the posts that we put out on Facebook and Instagram. So it really does take a village to put this together, and everybody's busy. All of us have jobs and separate things going on. So I really want to thank everyone again for being here, and thank everyone on our committee that maybe doesn't show their face or talk as much as I do in it, because I know I talk a lot, but I just want to say thank you to everyone.
Shayna and Arti, thank you very much. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.
Yep, thank you, guys.
Yeah, Shayna. And through, only thing I would say is from having open discussion and generating ideas, and executing those ideas, so that way it becomes like really a platform. My vision is our community is so strong now compared to the 15, 20 years back materially and education wise. So why can't we build a platform for the generations coming up and the generation which are on the kind of graceful aging, we can call it, and then everyone benefits, because we do have tremendous what you call resources, not only material but educational, so many people, professionals. So why can't we look at that part of the community and ignore the part of some of the other things which comes with the community, but capitalize on our strength? And if we can do that and execute, I think we will be really a model community where everyone grow together and thrive together as a human. And healthy mind, he will have a healthy body will have a healthy life, and healthy life will be able to contribute so positively and make this place, our planet Earth, better for the future generation. Thank you.
I completely agree. Thank you, Rajagaka. I think that's it for today's session, because I do not want to go a little more over time than I already did. But I really do thank everyone for being here. If you ever want to refer back to this, it's going to be on the USA Samaj page for Facebook. And if you follow us, we're going to continue to have different panels on different subjects. If there's anything that you have an idea about or you want to be a part of, you can go ahead and email us, message us. We're always looking for new topics and things to talk about, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. So if there's anything that you think of, please let us know. And if there's ever any help or resources, we will do our best to help. So Ram Kabir, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.